Everyone wants to know, when will home ownership become more affordable? What's the current climate of the housing market? And what obstacles do potential homeowners face in striving for the American dream?
The United States is going through a housing affordability crisis.
Correct. Now, this surge is causing many Americans to wonder, are we barreling toward a housing market crash?
These questions have been a focal point of heated discussions and deliberations, particularly in recent times. Let's talk about this. A recent Harris Poll survey showing that most renters in the United States view home ownership as an unreachable dream due to inflated housing markets. The astronomical surge in house prices, a scarcity of housing inventory, and a growing wealth chasm between homeowners and renters are all contributors to this perceived inaccessibility. But these aren't the only concerns. The survey also highlights the influence of climate change on home insurance and the escalating participation of hedge fund companies in real estate.
A recent study by MetLife Investment Management found that by 2030, so in some 7 years, institutional investors could control 40% of single-family rental homes.
Alarmingly, home ownership rates is particularly troubling, with Black Americans encountering substantial obstacles to home ownership.
Tristan, will you have this man to...
In April, Tristan and Jeffrey Foreman had the fairy tale wedding they'd always dreamed of.
I will.
Exchanging vows, surrounded by family and friends.
Married now, y'all!
But as they embark on their new life together, one major thing is missing: a dream home. Just months after marrying, two separate banks turned them down for a loan due to Tristan's low credit score.
It made me feel, I'm sorry to say, it made me feel worthless. Honestly, it made me feel as if I can't provide for my kids in a town that I grew up in.
Tristan is part of a growing group of Black Americans who are struggling to buy homes, even as overall home ownership is on the rise. According to the National Association of Realtors, just over 43% of Black Americans owned their own home in 2020, lower than a decade ago and nearly a third below white Americans.
I think the other thing...
Michael Neal from the Urban Institute says that while it's true that Black households have lower incomes and credit scores, policies like redlining, which allowed banks to refuse someone a loan because they lived in a poorer neighborhood, have systematically excluded people of color from the housing market.
Adding another layer to this complex scenario is the Federal Reserve's rate hikes, which have further complicated the affordability of homes for many. While attempts from various sources have been made to address these issues and make affordable homes more accessible, successful efforts have barely scratched the surface.
I know the cost of housing is so important to you. If inflation keeps coming down, mortgage rates will come down as well, and the Fed acknowledges that. But I'm not waiting. I want to provide an annual tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years as mortgage rates come down, to put toward their mortgages when they buy their first home or trade up for a little more space. Just for 2 years. And my administration is also eliminating title insurance on federally backed mortgages. When you refinance your home, you can save $1,000 or more as a consequence. For millions of renters, we're cracking down on big landlords who use antitrust law, who break antitrust laws by price fixing and driving up rents. We've cut red tape so builders can get federally financing, which is already helping build a record 1.7 million new housing units nationwide. Now pass and build and renovate 2 million affordable homes and bring those rents down.
In response to this housing crisis, the housing industry, along with the government and developers, are shifting their focus to varied solutions. During New Homes Month in April, the National Association of Home Builders found that new homes built in the previous year were the smallest in 13 years. This shift towards smaller homes has been a trend for the past 2 decades, driven by buyer preferences and the need to improve affordability. In addition to these efforts, more innovative solutions are being introduced. Government subsidies are being considered for first-time homebuyers to make home ownership more accessible. Additionally, rent-to-own schemes are gaining popularity, offering a viable alternative for those unable to afford immediate ownership. There is also a growing emphasis on the increased construction of affordable housing units. Despite facing challenges like limited buildable lots and labor shortages, builders are also reducing home prices. The median price of new homes in the previous year was down 6% from the year before. Through these various strategies, the housing industry aims to make housing more equitable and affordable for all. However, the housing affordability crisis isn't just about home prices and sizes. Millennials and Gen Z are finding it difficult to enter the housing market due to high mortgage rates, limited housing supply, sluggish wage growth, and increasing debt.
My life is very different than what I envisioned it would be.
Crazy. Rachel Gambino and Garrett Mazzio followed the roadmap that previous generations said would spell success. Go to college, get married, work hard, buy a house, start a family.
This is the American dream, but at what cost? So we have all of those things and we appreciate every single one of those things, but we think about how we could lose those things very quickly. If one of us loses our job, we're in a not good place.
Between their college debt and monthly mortgage payment, they feel they've slipped into a lower economic class than the one they grew up in.
These issues stem from past decisions that led to demand surpassing available supply, resulting in inflated home prices. Strangely enough, efforts to lower interest rates to address affordability could potentially worsen the problem by attracting more buyers and driving prices up.
I think that inflation's here to stay, Neil. I think you're going to have mortgage rates are going to be high, and I think that housing prices are going to continue to go up. Neil, if what President Biden said yesterday, he said that there might be a tax cut, not a tax cut, a rate cut this year. If that happens, Neil, I think you could see housing prices go even higher.
So by that argument, I think that a rate cut, whatever people think of the justification of that, it could be a little inflationary here. But what do you make of it?
It could be very inflationary. And the problem is if you don't own a home and you don't own a home right now, you're going to have a two-pronged problem. Number one, you're going to have inflation, which means that just by time going by, the inflation, the cost of the house will go up. The other thing is if the Federal Reserve comes in and, let's say, helps out a politician before an election and reduces rates even with a high inflation print, you could see those home prices go up, in my opinion, 5, 10, 20%. That would be just insane, Neil. You would start to have a buying frenzy again, much like during COVID. So I think right now the good thing is that mortgage rates are high. But if they lower those rates, those prices could skyrocket again.
The root cause of the housing problem is often attributed to governmental forces, particularly the Federal Reserve's policies. Proposed solutions include implementing stricter standards for home ownership to reduce demand and stabilize prices. However, the likelihood of such measures being implemented is low due to vested interests in the housing market. There's no doubt the state of the housing market presents several challenges for potential homeowners. The Harris Poll survey highlights these challenges and their implications, including unaffordable housing markets, the widening wealth gap, and the impact of climate change on home insurance. The industry's response, a shift towards smaller, more affordable homes, is a step in the right direction, but it doesn't address all the issues. The affordability crisis is also tied to high mortgage rates, limited housing supply, and sluggish wage growth, particularly for younger generations. With myriad factors at play, the path to homeownership is far from straightforward.